mayoral candidate will be on the general election ballot despite an attempt to block her candidacy by an ally of current Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who is
a mayoral candidate being challenged. The saga surrounding embattled South suburban politician Tiffany Henyard.
If you think things couldn't get any messier, Tiffany Henyard, the troubled mayor of Dothan, Illinois, and the supervisor of Township, has made headlines again, but not for the reasons you might expect from a public figure. This story is a never-ending roller coaster of public rage, power struggles, lawsuits, and political upheaval. You made a mistake. The turmoil around Henyard has escalated to a point where the neighborhood is experiencing the effects. Everyone is left wondering how this is still occurring after Henyard's measures, which have included closing government services and locking out citizens.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard was not at the hearing here today. Neither was her attorney, and she was not made available for a...
Residents in Township are furious and frantically trying to comprehend the ramifications of this extraordinary failure after the most recent bombshell sent shockwaves through the community, causing a full-scale government shutdown. The Board of Trustees has repeatedly missed meetings, which has prevented them from creating a quorum to perform fundamental township business, forcing the township, an important lifeline for many, to halt all operations. This is not an isolated incident. It is the 5th time in a row. When meetings have been canceled in recent weeks due to low attendance, the ripple effects of this neglect have put residents, staff, and the township itself in a precarious position, causing outrage and exposing the government's incapacity to carry out its most basic duties. One of the immediate repercussions is the township's inability to renew insurance policies, a prerequisite for lawful functioning. Without these regulations, the government cannot operate, which leads to the total suspension of programs and services that are necessary to the community. Vulnerable citizens who rely on transportation for medical appointments, food aid, and other critical support are now put in limbo, struggling with anger and uncertainty regarding their equally concerning futures. Township workers could soon face layoffs, an unfortunate setback that was exacerbated by the fact that it happened just a few days before Christmas, leaving families concerned about how they will survive during what should be a time of hope and thanks. Residents and community leaders are wondering how this mayhem could have gotten out of control, and many are blaming the trustees directly for their repeated failure to appear. Many see these absences as a blatant show of carelessness that indicates a total disregard for the township's responsibilities and the well-being of its residents. While some trustees have provided evasive justifications for their absence, others have remained silent. Their silence speaking volumes about the residents who attended previous meetings described the tense and bickering environment with little progress being made on pressing issues as the township spiraled deeper into dysfunction. Meanwhile, Mayor Tiffany Henyard, already embroiled in her own controversies, has come under renewed scrutiny from critics who accuse her of exacerbating the crisis by failing to unify the board and creating a climate of discord. The human impact of this shutdown cannot be overstated, as many residents now experience disruptions to the programs they depend on to survive. Families who depend on food assistance are facing increasing uncertainty about how they will put meals on the table, while seniors who need transportation to get to critical healthcare appointments are left stranded. Every demography experiences the ripple effects, underscoring the township's crucial role in offering a safety net for its most vulnerable citizens, one that is currently disintegrating as a result of as a clear illustration of what happens when political dysfunction takes precedence over public service. Township's board's failure to fulfill its fundamental duties has left many residents feeling betrayed by the very leaders they trusted to represent their interests. This situation also raises serious concerns about accountability and governance. The voices for reform are becoming louder, and some locals are calling for higher levels of township leaders have been urged by activists and community advocates to put aside personal and political differences in order to prioritize the welfare of the community for many. However, this shutdown is the result of long-standing issues within Township, where accusations of poor management and a lack of transparency have plagued its leadership for years. As the holidays draw near, The timing of this crisis only intensifies its impact, creating, in a cruel irony, as families prepare for the holiday season with an uncertain future, workers who have worked for the township for years now face the threat of losing their jobs because of a lack of leadership. The emotional toll is high as workers worry about how they will support their families or provide for their kids over the holidays, while residents feel abandoned by a government that seems more interested in petty infighting than in upholding its duties. When one considers the profound need for the services that Thoron Township is meant to provide and has been deprived of in what many are referring to as a crisis of governance, free fall becomes even more terrible.
Are off behind me. The doors are locked here, and there's a sign on the building right now that says it's closed. For how long? Neither residents nor employees know it.
At a recent meeting, OS Mayor Tiffany Henyard publicly chastised absent trustees Carmen Carlisle and Chris Gonzalez, accusing them of failing to fulfill their duties and purposefully holding the township hostage. In the midst of Thoron Township's ongoing governmental chaos, Henyard has been quick to shift blame for the impasse that has left residents and services in limbo. Henyard claims that their refusal to attend meetings is part of a deliberate plan to prevent her from selecting a successor for a trustee post that is open, a step that the professional believes is necessary to end the impasse that has halted township operations. But it's not high school, although Henyard expressed frustration as she criticized the deadlock and argued for urgency. Her detractors, including the trustees she accuses, offer a radically different account, presenting a picture of a leader whose goals may be less about governance and more about strengthening the trust and power. Chris Gonzalez has responded to the scathing claims with his own assessment of her leadership, refusing to remain silent. Henyard is accused by Gonzalez of trying to get beyond the checks and balances put in place to stop financial malfeasance, and we've been working hard to monitor stuff like that. Her reckless spending is a criticism supported by her contentious spending history during her reign, Gonzalez said, implying that permitting Henyard to, in a town already dealing with accusations of poor management, appointing a tie-breaking trustee could lead to further financial turmoil. Gonzalez's comments reflected a more general opinion in the community and among certain township officials, many of whom believe that Henyard's appointment drive is a covert attempt to obtain unbridled authority over the board's choices. This dispute highlights the significant gap that has existed between Henyard and some of the township's trustees. An important part in the current impasse, Henyard's detractors contend that her leadership style has been polarizing from the beginning, characterized by a reluctance to work with others and a tendency to push her agenda through frequently at the expense of openness and financial prudence. They claim that her insistence on designating a trustee in order to obtain a tie-breaking vote is just another instance of her putting her own interests ahead of the community's needs. But Henyard insists that her activities are motivated by a sincere wish to get the township back up and running and make sure that vital services can start up again. But her history makes her story more difficult to understand. During her time there, Henyard has been involved in a number of scandals, including claims of financial irregularities and poor management. Critics point to these prior problems as grounds for caution when granting her the power to name a trustee who would probably support her on divisive matters. Trust Gonzalez's cautions regarding the possible repercussions of giving Henyard more authority are indicative of larger worries about responsibility and governance in the township. Gonzalez expresses concern that Henyard's track record of dubious financial decisions may be further permitted if she is granted the authority she desires, while the community essential services like food assistance, elder transportation, and medical care are the ones that suffer the most from this political impasse. Vulnerable residents continue to be suspended. Residents and staff in the town face the bleak prospect of layoffs. The narrative of blame and counterblame between Henyard and the trustees provides little consolation to individuals who are left wondering how their urgent needs will be handled. They express growing irritation with the leaders they believe have abandoned their responsibilities. Many locals believe that leadership has failed on all fronts, a view that is reflected in the growing clamor for reform And the stakes for accountability in Township are extremely high for Henyard, as the impasse threatens to undermine what little credibility she still has as mayor, especially as her detractors become more vocal in their doubts about her leadership and motivations. Her claim that the dysfunction of the township is like a high school play only serves to highlight the public's perception of a government that is more concerned with self-interest and pettiness than with serving its constituents, while Henyard maintains that she is defending the township's interests. Her detractors are similarly certain that she is battling for power, which they feel might make Thon's current problems worse rather than better. The conflict between Henyard and her opponents has evolved into a struggle for the entire foundation of Township's government, rather than just a disagreement over process or policy.
To provide a way, provide services, and we're not doing that because they're stalling government, gridlocking it, because they can't have.
For months, Tiffany Henyard has been under federal investigation, with subpoenas flying in all directions and accusations piling up. Her tenure as the mayor of Dolton and the supervisor of Township has been tainted by accusations of financial mismanagement and dubious priorities, leaving residents highly irritated and disillusioned. There have been reports of Surface's extravagant spending, including an eye-opening $85,000 of taxpayer funds used for a poorly attended concert. What's even more shocking is the discovery of a one-day spending spree of over $40,000 on Amazon, which has left locals demanding answers and adding to her list of scandals. Previously a source of pride, Henyard's cancer charity was shut down for not holding donors accountable for their spending. Failure has only increased the skepticism surrounding her leadership. Critics contend that instead of serving her constituents, Henyard has used her positions to further self-serving agendas and enhance her image while neglecting important community needs. The breaking point was the compounding impact of these allegations on the township's daily operations, as one irate resident encapsulated the sentiment of the entire community, claiming that all of this silliness and frustration are preventing the real business from getting done. Residents of Dolton and Township, where confidence in the leadership is declining more quickly than ever, say that instead of lavish spending and scandal, the emphasis should be on essential services and efficient governance. Following the scandal, the image of poor management continues to feed the backlash against the Henyard's administration, and her opponents view her every action as representative of a larger leadership failure. Even if Henyard has attempted to appear strong and defiant in the face of the circulating accusations, her track record of unsolved problems makes it difficult for her to command public trust. Her difficulties with openness and accountability leave a lasting impact, bringing her closer to the brink of political isolation as tensions rise and demand on Henyard to respond to these charges increases. It is uncertain whether she can save her job or whether her tenure in office will be remembered as a warning about unmet promises and unbridled authority, especially with federal probes pending and a skeptical public watching her every move.
Comment from Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Voters here will first head to the polls in February for the primary election, then the general mayor.
Henyard's troubles don't end there. She is also involved in a bitter legal battle with the Democratic Party of Township after being abruptly removed from the ballot for the election next year. At a news conference, Harris said, "They can't beat me, so they're trying to shut me up." At a rare Democratic caucus earlier this month, Senator Mapoom Harris, the party's comedian, led a voice vote that excluded Henyard from the slate of candidates. Henyard has charged that the process was rigged, accusing Harris of voter suppression and claiming that her supporters were locked out of the venue. Laws that no one likes to be used, and upon arrival, you discover that this is just what has occurred to make matters worse. Henyard, who recently announced her intention to run for re-election on social media, has promised to fight back. She referred to herself as a super mayor and pledged to improve the community, but many locals are still skeptical about her past. Jason House, a senior trustee who has been leading attempts to remove Henyard, has challenged her administration, calling it chaotic and corrupt. If elected mayor, he has promised to prioritize ethics reform and restore checks and balances to the village. Substance to let's talk about the title of the piece because Tiffany Henyard abruptly shut down the government of Thornton Township this week, increasing tensions between her and her critics. When residents and staff arrived, the township building's doors were closed, and the town assessor, Jason V. Brown, and her staff were caught off guard. Brown said, "We get no notification, no warning, nothing Friday, but they vanished right away once I saw the sign." Critics claimed that the insurance renewal could have to compel a meeting and keep her scheduled appointment. The community is already feeling the effects of the shutdown, and those who depend on township services like utility attendance and transportation to doctor's appointments are suddenly scrambling to find other arrangements. Henyard justified the shutdown as a necessary step, blaming the absent trustees for delaying government business. Reputable Carlisle judged the situation irresponsible, warning that playing political games with important families that depend on the township's programs is now. Local advocacy groups have filled the gap despite their claims that the demand is too high. "We're doing everything we can to help, but the township should be providing these essential services for people who already live on the edge. This is a catastrophe, not just a little inconvenience," according to one volunteer coordinator, Street. Because of the uncertainty, many people are questioning whether the township's leadership can prioritize the needs of its most vulnerable residents. The township's beloved annual holiday toy distribution, which helps hundreds of local families every year, was canceled, which only made things more annoying. The event was supposed to take place over the weekend, but the outage caused it to be abruptly canceled. Outrage has been expressed by one homeowner said, "Our kids are the ones paying the price." This is what happens when politics gets in the way of doing what is right. Other parents who have been relying on the program to give their children presents have gone to social media to voice their complaints. The cancellation has only increased the community's mistrust of its leadership, and many are calling for an immediate solution. Trustees and 100 spokespeople we met with today are accusing it of being a scam. As if this weren't enough, Henyard's media handling during a recent hearing on candidate objections has also come under fire. She invited reporters to a press conference in a small office, but several of the staff members. Her staff removed reporters while television after months of covering the controversies in Henyard. Crews were told to stay with local YouTuber Burgundy Blue, and reporters from 2 newspapers were told to depart. The episode has enraged both locals and journalists, with many accusing Henyard of censorship. "We need to take action," says Burgundy Blue, who describes the experience as annoying but predictable. She is constantly trying to control the conversation. How about someone who will actually carry out their duties? Someone with photos all over the place who has come to work for the people, not themselves. She is currently facing eviction from a Dalton property after allegedly not paying rent for several. According to court documents, her landlord is seeking damages and past due rent of almost 13,000 C units, indicating that the unrest around Henyard has also impacted her personal life. According to reports, Henyard left the residence in October, but Camo Wood, her lover, is still residing there. Many people have expressed their frustration on social media, with some calling for Henyard to resign or even be imprisoned. One commenter mirrored the general outrage in the community by asking how this woman is not in prison. Critics have questioned how someone in such financial distress can successfully manage public finances, which has further fueled the flames. Another individual wrote, "I'm so tired of hearing about her. Can't they just get her out of there? How can she hold the township hostage like this?" The attorneys urged us to close the building earlier because of the high risk. Residents of Thornton Township and the village of Dalton feel abandoned and deceived due to financial scandals and a lack of responsibility. Many are now looking to the next election as an opportunity to implement meaningful change. But with Henyard stepping up her game, these sentiments are shared by those who have attended township meetings only to watch them turn into finger-pointing and shouting matches given the political infighting. It's uncertain how this narrative will end given her efforts and the growing number of her critics. Will Tiffany Henyard be able to hold on to her posts, or will the mounting pressure eventually drive her out? More significantly, what will it take for residents of Thornton Township and Elan to see the much-needed change? Please give your thoughts in the space provided below. Do you think Henyard should stay or should she go? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this drama as it unfolds.